Hello everybody, today we are at Tomini Classics. They were kind enough to let me video their cars all at night. Firstly we're gonna start with Ferraris, but we're gonna start from the earliest one. This is just introduction of the Ferraris that I'm gonna be featuring. So we got the 512 Boxer. We got a gorgeous one out of one Ferrari 599 Zagato. Over there, super rare 575 Super America, 550 Maranello, 355 Berlinetta, and another 550, but this one is a Barchetta. As well as we got a 512M, the Testarosa, but we're gonna begin from the oldest one to the youngest. So starting with this gorgeous 1958 Ferrari 250 GT, this one is the Elena. Originally it was styled by Pininfarina and built by Bueno. Then, beginning of its production time in 1957 or this model 1958, they switched the building company and started building with the company called Elena. This is where the name comes from, sort of the designation of the car. Now, there are a couple of differences between Elena and Bueno. There are a couple of mechanical differences. Transmission was a little bit different, different differential and transaxle. I'm not quite sure about the details, but the main styling cue was that the Buenos had a little bit shorter roof, so the Elena came with quite taller roof, which suited the style, the purpose of this car way better, as this was the Grand Tour, the fast Grand Tour of its day, made by Ferrari. Now let's just have a little walk around the car. Sorry for my poor filming skills. The lights, I don't know if you can see this, the lights are designed by Marcello. Ferrari logo here. It's a gentleman's sports car. It's not even a sports car, it's a Grand Tour. I truly love the profile of this car. That Pininfarina design. Here you can see it better. The roof is in a different color. Now this is just one of the variations of the 250 Ferraris. There was a long lineup consisting of different cars. Now this one is the Ferrari 250 Gran Turismo. Of course, there were as well as the racing cars like the 250 GTO. So the 250 in Ferraris stands for 250 cubic inches per cylinder. So this is a V12 car, so 12 times 250 is a 3 liter. So all the 250 V12 Ferraris used this engine that was designed by Colombo. And at that time, I mean, they were the kings of the streets. Ferrari racing cars and road cars owe a lot to this gorgeous V12, 3 liter V12 engine, producing something around 220 horsepower. Now, quite interesting exhausts. Now, when you say your Ferrari has 220 horsepower, that doesn't really say anything today. You can get 220 horsepower from a 4-cylinder turbocharged Golf, but this was the 50s. And again, this V12 design, although it was single overhead cam, it was a very smooth displacement, but a V12, which allowed Ferraris to have a very light engine, but which allowed the car to rev pretty high and get out of corners very fast. Let's take, for example, what was going back in 1950s. The Fords and the Chevys had massive V8 engines. They did have a lot of horsepower, but at the same time they were heavy, and all the torque was there at the bottom. And the high revving the car is, the better it is at racing. Just gorgeous car with very good looking wheels. So just imagine what Ferrari owners and Enzo himself felt in 1950s while climbing into this gorgeous Grand Tour. Just take a look at the door. Very thin, no pockets, nothing. Very nice door handle. Manual windows, of course. And this humongous Ferrari steering wheel. Now, just take a look at the seats. It's sort of a very big, long couch, because this car was not meant to go racing. This car was meant to cruise very fast from a country to a country with style, of course. It smells very good. All these cool gauges. It's like jewelry. The dash is sort of a part of the body of the car. It's even painted the same color. And it's a two-seater. There are leather latches to hold on your baggage. Very beautiful car. And one more thing I forgot to mention is that meanwhile the 250 series Ferraris are fetching incredible amount of money, this one is still sort of reasonable. Well, if you can say reasonable for 250 Ferrari standards. This is around $1 million car, which is which is a lot of money. But if we look at other 250 Ferraris, or for example the 250 GTO, this is just the 50th of the price of those cars, and it truly is a wonderful Ferrari. So we had front engine Ferraris like the Elena in 50s and 60s, but in 70s Ferrari decided to put their V12s into the back middle of the car, creating the Ferrari Boxer. They already had experience with mounting engines in the middle with the Ferrari Dino, but that was a V8. Now this is a V12. So in the beginning there was the 365 Berlinetta Boxer, then there was this 512 Berlinetta Boxer, and the last one was 512 BBI. The BBI, I standing for fuel injected models. It's quite an interesting car. I'll try to squeeze in and show it to you from the back. Let's take a look at it. And this is the car that Doug reviewed. So, funny part about the name, they were calling it Berlinetta Boxer, as if it has a Boxer engine. But this is not your Boxer you find in Subarus. It's a flat engine, but it's still a V12. There's BB512. And just look at this engine cover. This is what used to be a cool engine cover. Not something that we see today. So this engine and this variation used to produce around 340 horsepower. Designed by Pininfarina. These are your door handles. Now let's just take a look at 70s Ferrari, the flagship of the Ferrari. Got some storage over there, which is nice. Manual gated shifter, some switches like James Bond car. This is the styling of the 70s. So the 512 name stayed for some time in Ferrari's lineup, from 70s, 80s and early 90s. This is a 1991 Ferrari Testarrosa, the last year of the Testarosa, which came to replace the 512 Boxer in 1984. So this is 80s styling Ferrari, and just take a look at it. I mean, honestly, in my opinion, 80s, the best 80s supercar is a Testarosa and bright yellow. So it had a very similar but a bit modernized 512 engine, producing this time close to 400 horsepower. Let's just take a look, you know, let the design of this crazy supercar sink in. Every time I look at a Testarosa, I get shivers on my skin, to be honest. Pop-up headlights. So the way Ferrari ended the 512 series was with the 512M. Now this is a 1996 model. They were produced for the past 2 years of the Ferrari 512 lineup. So just to give you an idea of how rare 512M is, Testarosas, the 512 and Testarosas overall, they were built around 7,000 units. 2,000 and a half, around that amount, of which were 512 TR, and only 501 unit were the 512M. So the differences of 512M and Testarosa and 512 TR is, first of all, there is no pop-up headlamps. They were gone, and I believe it has to do with different safety and regulation rules at that time, because this was already mid-90s. As well as we got a little bit crazy wheels. Looks like a starfish from SpongeBob. They are double discs. You can see the bolts all around, and it's a quite interesting star, which is a bit different from the 512T TR and Testarosa. Those wheels were just normal Ferrari stars. As well as at the back, there's a little bit of different lights. They're square here. F512M. Just to show you the profile of this car. It's a supercar. Let's just take a look inside of this crazy 80s supercar. This is how Ferrari finished off the 512 series. The engines by this time, by mid-90s, were producing almost 500 horsepower, and the cars were capable of more than 300 kilometers per hour. And of course you got your crazy door inserts. Over there, that's the Koda engine, of course designed by Berlinetta. Manual gated shifter. A great end to a very successful lineup of Ferrari cars, mid-engine ones. And of course, the Testarosa. The profile of the Testarosa right here.